When you think about or hear the phrase intergenerational integration in youth ministry or ministry in general, what comes to mind for you?
So for me, what comes to mind is students being engaged in the life of the church,
Mm-hmm.
in the life of the church being engaged in the lives of students.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is students being involved in the various ministries within the church. So it could be children's ministry, it can be ushers, it can be greeters, it can be hospitality, but
Mm-hmm.
students being engaged in the life of the church, which then puts them in front of adults who are engaged in the life of the church and
Yep.
can be in the lives of those students. And so it's students, for me, hearing that it's students being engaged in the life of the church and the church being engaged in the lives of students.
That is super good. I think, at least for me personally, as a youth pastor, when I think of intergenerational integration, that's not always a two-way street. Like usually, at least implicitly in my mind, is just, okay, how can we kind of shove students into the lives of adults and families that are not their own in a fruitful and helpful way within the local church? Not usually, how can the local church kind of move in to the lives of students in that
Yes, sir.
way? So
Yes, sir.
that's a super helpful framework for us to kind of start with. I guess maybe a follow-up question to that is, how might something like intergenerational integration be different from, you know, in some traditions you have godparents where, a close friend of your parents, they're essentially like an uncle or an aunt. They just kind of like pour into you over the course of your life. They're with you at your baptism. They kind of come alongside you at confirmation, if that's a thing your tradition does, or whatever the case may be. I'm curious, in your mind, how is intergenerational integration different from a concept like godmother, godfather,
Mm.
things like that?
That's a great question. And I
Yeah.
think when I think about the difference, I think about just the intentions. And so when we
Okay.
think about intergenerational relationships as it relates to the church,
Mm-hmm.
it's adults within the church being intentional about creating a space, especially during this time where there's this epidemic of loneliness,
Sure. That's good.
where students are isolated. They may feel isolated for whatever reason, but there's these adults that come alongside and are intentional about pursuing relationships with young people.